Hey,
Jesus.
okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Here we are for another interview of her gutsy voice. I love finding women who run a business, have a business, and they still run a family. And it can be done, ladies, absolutely can be done, but you need a gutsy voice. You need to be able to know what you're doing, to be able to communicate with your family, getting them on board for the support that we all need when we're juggling our busy schedule and our kids and our husbands and our family and our calendar, all of that. And I have with me Daphne today. And Daphne, when did you start your business? How young were you?
I started my business in 2016. So,
So you've been doing it a long time.
yeah.
How did you
Yeah.
decide? How did you decide that you wanted to have a business?
It sort of is something that came, I guess, fell into my lap, came naturally to me. I had been working with my husband in his business. He does a blue collar commercial truck and heavy equipment repair. And then I was always like sort of the tasked with the administrative stuff. And then in 2016, I took a course about lead generation, and I used that for his business, or for our business, I should say, and built a website and did the SEO, and we started growing. Our business started growing and started receiving calls from people that were finding us online and on Google and on all these different places. And so our business grew pretty well after that. And so then it kind of like, I guess there was a few different factors in that situation, but it made me realize that I could do that for other small businesses. And so, and then I was like, well, this will be another income stream and all that kind of stuff. And then the hard part for me was actually learning to sell my services, because it was easy to like do the work,
Uh-huh.
and build the sites and do the SEO and things like that. It was harder for me. I had to learn how to sell those services to other people. And then you enter into a whole other realm of sales and marketing and all that kind of stuff, and getting your name out there and getting people to trust you. And so, yeah, it started from there. But I guess because I had that, I wasn't in survival mode at the time. So it wasn't like I started the business and then was immediately thrown into, I've got to pay the bills, I've got to, do this and all that. My husband, job already supported our family. And so this was just something that kind of like took hold. And because I am a busy person, I loved that. Initially, it was sort of difficult for me to find like a balance or a rhythm, because I wanted to throw all of myself into the business. I wanted to like, I was studying late at night and watching videos and doing the courses, and every little what do they call shiny new toy that came along, and they're like, oh, this does this and that new software does that, and this person over here says this thing. So entering into the marketing world was, it was uh it was crazy for me at first.
So here you are. You knew how to take your family business, your husband's business, and grow it. And then you decided, wow, I can do this for other people. And then that whole hill you had to jump over of how do I find those other people?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do I get those other people?
Yeah.
When you were doing that and putting in a lot of time into doing that, what kind of feedback were you getting from your family? Like, hey, mom, where's dinner? Mom, what are you doing? How come my mom's always on the computer?
Yeah. I'm a homeschool mom, so I had at the time two children that I was homeschooling and one that I was still breastfeeding, one I was still nursing. She was a baby still. And then my husband was always pretty supportive, although he was also very busy. He was not at home. He was always on a job. He was, doing his thing. And previous to me starting the business, I had always just I say been a mom. I was doing all the things, managing the household, taking care of the kids. I was raising a newborn at the time. Cooking, cleaning, homeschooling, all of that kind of stuff. So when you add something like building a business and growing a business to that plate, it gets pretty. You go through, I think, some personal development stuff. And I always tell people nobody starts a business to grow in their personal development. Nobody does. But that's exactly what happens. You learn time management, you start learning about your own insecurities and all of this stuff that's like ingrained in you starts coming out of like, will people accept that? All of this mindset stuff starts coming in, like where we have bad mindsets concerning ourselves, concerning money, concerning everything, right? Who we are, our identity, all of that kind of stuff starts coming out. So that's sort of the roller coaster that I went down for about 2 years after I started my business because it was like I could do this new thing now and I was making some money, but it was trying to juggle all of the other stuff too. And it wasn't that I didn't have my husband's support, but I also, there were times where I felt like he didn't take it as seriously. Like he was always supportive, like, yeah, you do you, this is great and whatever. But I'm like, you're not seeing this like a real thing. Like when I need help with the kids or when you get home and you can kind of take over so that I can finish this project or that I can, study some more and whatever. And I felt like I had always given that to him. And I felt like he wasn't necessarily reciprocating that in the same way. And I don't feel like it's because he didn't want to be supportive. I just feel like he didn't know how either. So anyways, we went through that for about 2 years.
You're pointing to something that's really important, where women are starting a new business and somehow it isn't seen as important, or, yeah, I guess the word is important, as his job.
Hmm.
And the measurement often is the money.
Right.
When you're starting a new business, it's not going to be profitable for at least, what do they say, 3 years or 5 years, somewhere around there,
Yeah.
like, right? And a lot of times the husbands are thinking, well, that's taking away from her real job, the real job of keeping the house together and making sure the kids are okay and homeschooling and all of this. And you talked about mindset. So how did you begin to value what you were doing? And then how did you communicate that to your husband so that he finally understood that this was just as important to you?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. And actually it wasn't one thing, it was a journey for us. Our marriage went through a really hard time after the year after I started my business. And I don't think it was my business. It was a culmination of a bunch of things going on with his business and just employees and family and just a bunch of stuff. So me having the business during that time was a factor. Um, but we talked, we had to talk a lot. And part of part of me, growing as an entrepreneur was like you said, the mindset stuff. And I had to deal with a lot of personal insecurities and even the way that I felt like he would see me. Even though I know my husband loves me and he thinks the world of me and all of that, it was like you're not really taking me seriously. And if you can't take me seriously, how does anybody else take me seriously? Like, oh, I'm just a mom. This is just a thing I do on the side. This is just, this little hobby thing that kind of makes a little bit of money, sort of like doing crafts or something. So it kind of it made me angry. And I felt like I remember having a conversation with him once and saying, I've asked you a few times to share what I do with some of the companies that you work with, and you won't say. He's like, oh, I just forgot. And I'm like, that's not fair. Because, like, on the one hand, I feel like I got you all that work. I brought in all this business, and then you feel almost like embarrassed to say my wife does XYZ. And he was like, "Well, I don't feel embarrassed of you. It's not that. It's just, you know." And I'm like, "But it really felt like that to me. It felt like I felt like he didn't take it seriously and it wasn't this serious thing. Now, fast forward, I've had the business now for 9 years. He tells everybody about what I do and he's very proud of what I do. And people can see it too. Like they look at his marketing and like, oh my God, who do you have doing this, that, and the other? And he's like, oh, that's my wife. So it's kind of come around, but I feel like there's proving ground
Yeah.
years that you have to go through too.
Yeah.
And it's not that I've ever been really flighty. It's just that I think when you're transitioning into this new area of really personal development, your family, especially your husband, has a hard time trying to figure out who you are during all of that, you know? So I think, for us, it was different. He always had worked in the industry he was in from the time we got married. So for us, for me, it was easy to support him in that. And it was easy to just, be his cheerleader and be his support and be his, foundation. And then when I tried to do that, it was like, it was like this little tack on, this little add-on thing, So it did feel like that. And I feel like a lot of women feel like, I don't think that that's just, universal to me. And then especially because of the field that I entered into, which is marketing, is pretty much male, it's a male dominated space. And so there was that also. And I don't consider myself a feminist in any way. However, there was that feeling of like you're going up against the grain. Like I was in competition a lot of times with men in the same field that this was their job. This was their 9 to 5. This was their full-time thing. This was how they earned money for their families. And then, they were able to spend 10, 12 hours a day doing this thing, right? And me, I was having to find bits of time between raising kids and running everybody around to all of their extracurriculars and doing the homeschooling and running the family and running my husband's business and then trying to find time to like find clients and do the projects. So it was a lot different for me for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah, you're really bringing out a lot of great points of how women doing a business is so different than how a man is seen
Yeah.
in the business world,
Yeah.
because they don't have to wear all those hats. And so, whenever a woman has made it successful in the business world, carving out being an entrepreneur, hats off to her. And I say that hats is plural because women are wearing multiple hats, to say the
Hmm.
least. And the support we need, the encouragement that we need, because it's difficult. We put a lot of our blood, sweat, and tears into the business and it takes away from the family. And if they're
Hmm.
begrudging us that, giving us I call it, in our family, we called it the Pooji face. The Pooji face was like, that kind of like smelling something rotten. And as for women, it's like when our husbands or our kids complain about something, we feel that we failed,
Hmm.
as opposed to just saying, listen, guys, there's food in the refrigerator. You're going to learn how to do that yourself.
Hmm.
And how do we feel our own self-worth and our own value on what we're doing? And to have that voice, to be able to, that internal voice, which is that mindset.
Hmm.
So when you look at, you kept going, what was your internal voice that kept you going?
Um, I think it was this feeling that I had something that was only mine, right? Like something
Oh,
that
I
I
love
was good
that. I
at.
love that. I love that. I tell women, really have something that belongs to you,
Right.
you
And
know?
it was me. It was putting a lot of it, the the online marketing industry, I say came naturally to me in some ways, yes, in some ways, no, but in the sense that I'm really part of being raised by a narcissist is intuitively knowing,
I'm sorry, what?
yeah,
That's a whole other show.
intuitively knowing what people want to see and what people want to hear. And
Uh-huh.
so that actually did help me in my business is when I was able to help other people market their businesses, whether it was a service-based business or a brick and mortar or an online business, I could kind of look at things from the perspective of what do their customers and clients want to see when they land on this page, or what do they want to hear when they hear you talk and all of that. Any of your marketing, what do they need to see and hear to feel like they can trust you and be in business with you or go to your place of business. And so that did help me. And like I said, that was sort of my outlet of creativity. I'm not a crafty person. I'm not one of those creative people. My kids can tell you I hate arts and crafts, but I loved this part of designing things online because I felt like they mattered. And I felt like they mattered to somebody else's business and they mattered, to me. So yeah, it was a thing that was just mine. It didn't have any effect. Like this wasn't about my children and it wasn't about my husband. It was about what I was doing as a service
Yeah.
for somebody else. And so that made me feel good about myself. But then I was dealing with all of the other stuff too. And I really didn't feel like a lot of that came from my husband. I mean, from my kids. My kids are with me like 24/7. So I feel like they always were like they had their little rhythm and their routine we did during the day. I feel like a lot of the pushback, and I say pushback, it wasn't really pushback in that he didn't want me to do it. It was more of the feeling neglected.
Yeah.
My
Yeah. Yeah.
husband is
Like you're
very.
taking away time from us to do that, and that's just a
Yes.
hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it made me angry. Like that part made me angry because um I am not a very subservient wife in that respect. Like we've always been just very like forthcoming with each other, very real, very I've always, spoken my mind. And so when it was my husband's love language is time. Ugh. And mine is acts of service. So I always felt like the house is clean, the kids are taken care of, there's dinner on the table, all those things are done. You should be happy. And he always felt like, are you gonna come watch TV with me? Are you coming to bed right now? Are we, like all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God. Like that drove me insane. And I finally just was like, I'm no, I'm not. So, because I also felt like it wasn't fair in that respect where he was getting, I felt like the best of me in those ways where I was still doing I didn't drop the ball. I didn't, change our lifestyle necessarily, I should say, to do my business. Like I was still homeschooling. I didn't stick my kids in school and send them to daycare and be like, I'm just going to be 100% focused on my business. I feel like that would have been a whole different argument. And I'm not like saying if anybody does that, it's wrong. I'm just saying I didn't change any of those things in our lifestyle. He still had the same home, the same wife, the same, rhythm. It's just that I was now busier in the evenings. And so I remember really trying to do it all. Like in 2017, I came to a
Yeah.
breaking point where I was trying to do it all. I was spending time with them, and then 10 o'clock, everybody would go to bed. The kids would go to bed, he would go to bed, everybody's happy, and then I would go to work. And I would stay up until about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning working, studying, doing the things that I needed to do to grow my business, and then going to bed and then getting up at 8 with my kids. So I was like living off of 3 and 4 hours of sleep. And I feel like I'm not saying that men don't do those things on occasion, but I was living that. I lived that for a period of 6 to 9 months, and it's unsustainable. And I knew that at the time, but I just didn't feel like there was anything else that I could do. Um,
And I am sure there's going to be women watching this going, I did that. And, you know, I don't know if you're aware or I'm so sensitive to this. So many coaches out there, female coaches, are posting about either I want to retire my husband and have him work for me, or they're they're getting divorced. I got to
Hmm.
tell you how many of these women are leaving their husbands
Yeah.
because they don't want all of that. They don't want that responsibility of feeling always like, oh my God, I've got to do all of this for them.
Hmm.
I just want to focus on me. And one of the biggest reasons to do this conversations is that, like, you can do it. You don't have to give up. Because I do think that after you've got your business going, aren't you happy you stayed with your husband?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
eventually it all worked out. But you said something that's really important and critical. You talked a lot. You said your mind. Okay. And the other thing is that I didn't hear you shrink when he would get upset. Like if he would get upset that
Yeah,
you
that's,
didn't go to bed at night with him or what have you, it's kind of like, okay, oh well. And you didn't go, oh my God, he's upset like that.
yeah.
And so
I
many
feel like
women
I've
do.
always been secure enough in our relationship that I knew that he loved me. So there was always that security, but I was never like afraid of him or to make him angry. That like I'm like, okay. And that's just me in general. I guess it's part of the way that I was raised too. Like people's emotions don't really move me in a direction. Like I'm pretty steady once I make up my mind about something. And so yeah, I didn't shrink back. It was once it's one of those things. I didn't like dig in my heels and be like, nope, well, just for that, I'm not going to bed now. I didn't do that either. It was just one of those things that I did what I needed to do when I needed to do it, whether he was upset or made a face, like you said,
Right.
or anything like that. So it was that for a while. And like I said, about a year or so after I started the business, our marriage went through a really hard time. It was a culmination of a bunch of things. It wasn't just my business, it was his business and it was, dynamics between the two of us and all that stuff. But we worked through that and coincidentally I ended up getting pregnant in 2018. Surprise. And so that also changed the dynamics too because he everything that he was, I guess, working towards at the time sort of had to stop and the same happened for me because I get really sick. And so he had to basically stop and take care of me. And I had to stop what I was doing because I just couldn't do it anymore. And so I took sort of a hiatus and I still stayed in contact with a lot of the people that I had done projects for or that I was associated in business with, like in a group setting. But I took off. And I just really was focused on growing a baby at that point because I cannot focus on anything else. I don't have the mental or the physical capacity to do that. And after my daughter was born, the next thing that I started doing was creating a website for me and then like blogging. And I remember I had, so this is my fourth child at this time, and then had, a newborn, and he kind of got upset about that. And I was like, I don't care. I really don't care. Like, if you're mad about this, and we did have to talk a lot. But the funny thing is, my husband gets postpartum depression after every child, and I don't. And
Oh,
it's a
great.
thing. Like, it really is a thing for us. Like, every single child I've had, he gets postpartum depression for about a period of like 3 months. And he's so hard to live with after that. And I just don't, I love him but I don't baby him. And so that was a thing that I guess I did. And if I bring it up now, he hates it. He's like, "Ah, don't remind me." But because he gets embarrassed about it, but at the same time, it's something that I had to, I'm like, I can't juggle your, you know, man-child emotions and also nurse a newborn all night long and still do this during the day. So I like had to be just frank with him about that. Um, and he loved me enough to like obviously stick through that with when he felt like he wasn't being validated or being, that his emotions were being ignored, but I just didn't have the mental capacity to deal with all that either. And so and we worked through it. And now it's completely different. Like obviously the kids grow and life changes and I've got two teenagers and, and all of that. And his business has taken a few directions over that period of time just because of economics and COVID and all these different things that were external factors. And so yeah, we're in a whole different place now. And I pretty much work my business every day now. I'm in front of the computer, I'm in meetings, I'm in, scheduling projects and stuff. And he really respects that. And he was like, did you have any work, to do this weekend or whatever? And I'm like, no, today we're good. And so he's like, oh, okay, well, I was thinking, so like he does ask about that now,
Yeah.
and he'll listen to me vent about, either projects or stuff that I've seen online or had to deal with, kind of the way that I would do for him. And I feel like he respects that now. So it's a lot more level playing field and equal in that respect. And he's always been like very supportive of me, like as far as like, I think you're so beautiful. I think you're so smart. I think, you have a lot to offer. But the dynamics between the two of us were like a little bit messy during that period of time. Yeah.
In 2020, the magical word was pivoting, right? Everybody talked about pivoting, and they talked about pivoting for their jobs, their careers.
Right.
People who were doing live events, they had to pivot, and online programs started to happen. But pivoting also happens in marriages.
Hmm.
We do. We pivot. We're not the same person that we married or when we
Yeah.
got married, and
Right.
we have to
Exactly.
learn. And, for me, it's all about communicating from not being afraid to communicate, but to say it. And then if somebody gets upset, work through it. And just not to give up, not to think just because we're having an argument or we disagree, that's the end of the relationship.
Right.
Just the same, it's not the end of the business when you get pregnant and you can't run the business for a while. It's not the end of the business.
Right.
If we understood that there's times that we just need to put a pin in it.
Hmm.
You've heard that phrase, you just put a pin in it and I'll get back to it.
Hmm.
I'll get back to that conversation. I'll get back to that upset rather than make it the end of the world.
Right. Right.
But that takes communication, both internal and external.
Right.
Yeah. Like I can get through this, I can make it happen, and I can take time for myself, and I know my limits. I know what's expected of me, and I know what I can't do.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
It did. It was a lot of communication. And I feel like that's one thing that my husband and I have always had is the communication factor is when we were dating, that's all we did is talk and talk and talk. 3 o'clock in the morning on the phone, that kind of thing. To where when we got married, that just sort of carried over. And so when our, obviously the first year of marriage is hard. Our first year of marriage, we spent a lot of time arguing and a lot of time talking. I mean, if we were up till 3 a.m. arguing, on the bathroom floor about something. We don't even know what we were arguing about anymore, but about something. We still like talked through it. And I think that was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And I had an older friend when and I got married young. I was 18. But I had an older friend says, don't expect him to intuitively know what you think and what you feel. He has to be told,
Wow. Oh,
and that's
would
not
you
because he's
please say that
stupid.
again? Please say that again.
She
Okay.
said, don't expect him to intuitively know how you think and feel. She
Right.
said, he has to be told.
Yeah.
And she goes, it's not because he's stupid. It's just because he thinks completely differently. He doesn't know you feel that way. He doesn't know you think that until you tell him.
Yeah.
And so I took that advice really early on. I was 18. And so early on in our marriage, when we would have an argument and I would find myself pouting about something and I would think, does he know why I'm upset, And then when I would tell him, it was like a light bulb would go off and he was like, "Oh, I didn't know that I didn't know that bothered you. I didn't know that's what you wanted to do, XYZ."
Yeah.
And so that helped our relationship and I started getting the I guess the reward, right, of telling him what I wanted and what I needed out of him a lot of times. And not that he was like, this, complacent, little servant man. He just it helped him understand and it helped our marriage be better. And so I feel like because we had that as a foundation in our marriage really early on, before kids, before any of that, um, that, here we were 15 years later in my business and things are coming up. And so we just talked about it or argued about it or like you said, put a pin in it and come back to it sort of thing. And so yeah, it's different now. I mean, we've been married now 23 years. And so something's working.
Yeah. I get a lot of women who tell me, my husband doesn't talk. Now, my take on that is men do talk. It's how we talk to them if they feel safe enough to talk back.
Right.
So, what are you doing? What's your voice when you talk to your husband? Are you talking to him from a place of frustration? Like in writing, there's different tones. We write
Hmm.
in different voices when we write. What's your voice when you talk to your husband? Frustrated, curious, defensive? What do you think is the best way to get him to open up and talk back?
I think now it's just me talking. I'll just bring up a subject, and just talk about it very, plainly like that. But before, like especially when we were first married and things, it was all of that. I would talk when I was frustrated. I would talk when he had made me mad. I would pout, I would give the silent treatment until he finally said something or whatever. Um, the difference I think between him talking back to me was one, like I said, we'd had that really early on established that we talked a lot to each other. But two, it was really coming from a place of like just being friends and understanding one another, not always taking offense to
Hmm.
everything. Um,
I
I mean,
call
not
that
saying
not taking it personally.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
like there were certain things that he would feel that he felt like I was being dismissive over, and there were things that I felt like he just was clueless about. Like it was a lot of that. But it honestly was just a lot of talking and saying when, and I had to learn to say things in a way that wasn't like generalizing everything. Like you always do this and you never do that and you always say these. I had to learn to stop that language because that's like it is very childish. I hear my kids say that all the time. We never get to blah blah blah, And I was like, so I had to learn that, and I would say no, not always, but when you did this, that's when I feel like this, and that started changing. So, and a lot of that was me being the communicator. I feel like women are generally the communicators in the relationship and they have to learn how to communicate. Like, I don't know why, but the default is always us. It's hardly the husband coming up and saying, "Honey, I have a problem." It's hardly that. It's always
You know
usually
what?
the
You know
woman.
what I learned? That when women talk, they increase their serotonin, which is their feel good. But when men talk, they decrease their testosterone. It's like God played a funny joke on us. So
Yeah.
we love to talk, and men, uh-huh, yep, my testosterone's going down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also found like doing something like not confrontational. So like not sitting him down in the living room and being like, we're going to talk about this. I mean,
No.
sometimes that has to happen, but for the most part, like a lot of times like I'll bring things up when we're out on a walk, like we go walking sometimes together or hiking or whatever. So I'll bring it up like when we're doing that or when we're driving, or just lounging sort of thing in a casual manner. Even if it's something that's a little heated, I feel like I can bring it up then and we can talk about it reasonably before with everybody's, not their emotions are not heightened.
Right. Yeah. Having conversations on a walk is good because you're really not looking at each other either.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
exercising and you're breathing and you're not going to have a big old fight out in the street.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Smart move.
But I also
Smart
feel like
move.
he listens better. Because I feel like I can say some things that normally would maybe make him angry. But when we're on a walk or something and we're just talking and walking and I bring it up or whatever, and I can feel him go, Yeah, I can see where you're talking about now. You know,
Wow.
like he gets a little bit, I feel like he listens a little bit better
Yeah.
in that way. But I mean, everybody's husband's different. I understand that. I have a friend, that's very close, and she gets so upset because her husband feels like he won't talk to her, or he won't talk to her. And but the problem is too, she doesn't talk to him because she doesn't want to upset him. So she's like, I don't bring it up because I don't want to say anything. And I'm like,
Right.
this is the problem. And
Right.
I'm not afraid of upsetting my husband necessarily. I guess I don't have that fear of like him getting, he's never been violent. So there's never been that fear, but I don't get upset about his emotions. Like if he gets emotionally upset, I'm just like, well, whatever. So
Right. Yeah, that's great advice. Great advice. Okay. So I do want to share what you do with our listeners. Okay. So who would be your ideal client in your business?
yeah, so I love helping women entrepreneurs, whether they have an online business or, a physical, brick and mortar business. I love helping women entrepreneurs with their marketing. So anybody that would need help with their website, their SEO strategies, their digital marketing, um, or even learning how to put a lot of that in place, like the automation aspect. So, how do I get somebody to land on a landing page, put in their name and email, and they get sent a series of emails with this offer or the deliverable on this freebie that I have? Or how do I get people on my email list or things like that? So, that's who I love to help. I love to help other women entrepreneurs. And my heart is always towards either women that are mothers or women that, that are working. I have a lot of women that are my clients that are empty nesters. And it's because now they feel like they can focus on their business and do the thing that the kids are out of the house and graduated and in college or married or whatever. And so I love, love, love helping them do that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, Daphne.
Thank you. Thank you
And
for having me on.
yeah, this has been fun. And thank you for tuning in and let us know what your thoughts are about balancing a career and a family too. Sending you all the love in the world and remember to be love.